All right, good evening, everybody. I will first of all admit that it's very strange sitting up here and speaking from the dais, but seems to be the best format with the panel that we have tonight regarding hurricane preparedness and flood preparedness for the township of Milburn. My name is Alex Mcdonald, business administrator for the township. Been working in the township for some capacity over the last 17 years. And have experienced multiple disaster events in Milburn, inclusive of Hurricane Irene, Hurricane Sandy, the October snowstorm, as well as Tropical Storm Ida, the most recent event. So every year for a while, we've put on a session to discuss what it is that the township does in preparation and during and post-storm events. We've generally done this for the South Mountain Civic Association and thought that this year and going forward, it would be best to make sure that we offer the opportunity to speak to everyone in the township, as these events are not just exclusive to South Mountain. And so I'm happy to be here, happy to have everybody up here and to help get through this discussion and answer questions. The format is going to be where we're going to go through a presentation. Hopefully it won't be too lengthy, but there's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff that we want to cover. And I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves individually, but essentially what you're looking at right now is those who respond in terms of an emergency and serve on the local Office of Emergency Management. And so I'll start with Jesse down here. He can introduce himself, and then we'll get started on the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jesse Mullman. I'm the Assistant Business Administrator for the Township, and I also serve as the Deputy OEM Coordinator.
A little bit more. You grew up here?
I grew up in town, been full-time with the Township for 7 years. Been, I guess, coming up on 12 years total. Township. So.
Good. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Robert Edgevere, Fire Chief of Milburn. I've been with the township for 27 years, 5 of our last as Fire Chief. I'm also the Township Deputy Management Coordinator, and I was also a volunteer firefighter here in Milburn for over 5 years as well. Grew up in town, went to Glenwood School, went to the Milburn school system, and I'm just love the community and everything that it represents and what it is. And I just love my job and I love what we do.
Christopher Beatty, born and raised in town, with the Milburn Fire Department for 25 years, 12 years as fire captain, and the last 5 as OEM coordinator. Like Alex said, been through multiple disasters through town. I always feel that meetings like this are important. We get progressive, and you know, it's all to benefit the township, the residents, and all the commuters that come in through town. So we're here to answer as questions as best we can.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ed Blazinski, captain with the Milburn Police Department. I've been with the township since 1995. I've been with OEMs for the last 3 years. I perform a small role with them because the fire department picks up most of the slack there. Those guys do an excellent job. I've been through most of the storms, and it's always been an issue. But between the DPW and the fire department, they get the job done. Absolutely get the job done. And that's, I don't mean to, leave you guys out of it, but because you guys do pick up the brunt of the sticks and cleaning up the catch basins. But the fire department does tireless work when it comes to submitting stuff to the OSHA and FEMA and all that. So, and just thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. I'm Tom Doty. Been with the township for 18 years. Most of you know me as the town forester. Currently, I'm the assistant superintendent of public works. And no, I did not grow up in town, but I love my job. I love the community. We're proud to represent Milburn in everything we do. And I appreciate this opportunity to be part of the group tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. John Collis, Supervisor of Road Department, DPW, born and raised in Milburn. Been on the job for 30+ years. Went to school, Wyoming School. Have been part of numerous storms. And just like Captain has said, between all entities, they are horrific, and we've fought them as hard as we could to help the public and everybody that's in need. So we are here to help you and answer questions this evening and hopefully get things done. Thank you.
Great. So, and again, just by that brief introduction, I wanted to demonstrate that we have an OEM team that sort of spans all of our departments, but not only that, but a group that has been with the municipality for a long time, has experience in what occurs here, and some that have not, grown up and been born and raised here. So there's a significant amount of institutional knowledge and experience with this group. So we'll get started real quick on the presentation. Jesse, if you want to bring that up, I'd appreciate it. So first and foremost, as we mentioned, all of us serve in some way, shape, or form on the with the Office of Emergency Management. This is a group that's mobilized in the event of a disaster, in the event of extreme weather or snowstorms, or even COVID, as we've experienced over the last 2 years. We are the ones that would be meeting, going over a township's response, making sure that we are addressing all of the needs and going through whatever it is that the township needs in terms of response, supplies, and all of that. So each of the departments is going to quickly present on their department. They're going to go through what they do pre-storm, what they do during the storm, what they do after the storm, so that there's some knowledge of each department's response. We're also going to go over things that individuals can do and things that we should all be doing to prepare as we head into hurricane season, which starts on June 1st. The most active part of that season generally is August, September, as we've experienced over the years. And so now is the time to start making those preparations, to start making those decisions, start making a plan, putting together a kit, whatever it might be on an individual basis, to get ready. Then we'll talk a little bit about communication, and then certainly get into questions and comments. So there is a local emergency planning council, which consists of your local OEM, but it also consists of the superintendent of schools, the Red Cross, the county, and other organizations that are necessary to be able to respond effectively to an emergency. That group must meet twice a week, or twice a month, so twice a year, sorry. Yeah. And Chris, as the coordinator of OEM, sort of handles all of that, and making sure that that gets done, and that if we have a tabletop exercise or some sort of exercise that needs to be completed, that we do that. The Office of Emergency Management, which we just explained, and Chris is the coordinator. Jesse, myself, and Rob and Ed are deputy coordinators of OEM. And Chris, I don't know if you just want to touch on the emergency operation plan so that there's just a brief understanding of what we have to put together and what we have.
All right, so our emergency operation plan is all encompassing of like 27 different entities. Goes from planning, sheltering, to evacuations, to flood mitigation. So we just re-upped, so we have to submit it to county, then they approve it, then they send that to state and they approve our plan. So we are current to 2025 for our EOP plan. It's very labor intensive because you have to think outside the box and you have to foresee the future of the next, certain event. Everything is a 100-year storm, but those are happening more often. So we have to change how we act, how we do things, different renovations in buildings for sheltering, warming stations. Just to touch on a few things of that nature, it's a work in progress all the time. Even though we're not due until 2025, but we're always adding and subtracting people, personnel, different buildings that come up, or proper use, or use that we can't. As long as county OEM and state approves it, we're good to go. And then if they have questions, they'll submit it. We'll meet as a group and we'll rehash and come up with a better plan. It's all looking into the future. What can we do to better prepare ourselves in the event of different types of emergencies? Not necessarily storms and hurricanes, but it's also power outages, trees down, roadways blocked, things of that nature. So it's all encompassing of the town. So it's like a work in progress always. That's why we have the meetings with the LEPC at least twice a year, different random events that we keep track of. So with our EOP, we can get different aids from state and federal, depending on, all the paperwork that is involved with tracking resources and man hours, all through FEMA. So it's a good resource for us to have so we can re-encumber some money during natural events and disasters.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so again, the emergency operation plan is sort of pivotal on our level to be able to have a public assistance application to FEMA post-disaster. Just by example, we are already in the process of submitting IDA expenses based on, debris removal as well as emergency operations, overtime, things like that. We've done that post-storm and every storm to recover funds for the township. From a financial perspective, we ensure that we have a reserve to be able to provide immediate response and not worry about the financial impact to the budget, and be able to then reimburse that line item with those funds from a public assistance application or grant through FEMA. So, we don't ever want to be in a position where we're not responding the best that we can based on finances or dollar decisions. We are making sure that those funds are in place at all times so that we can respond effectively. Another thing that has occurred this year, or actually last year, is that we started a flood mitigation advisory committee. This is something that has not been done over the years, despite the township's history of flooding. I think this is a really important step for Milburn. This group has worked tirelessly over the last 6-7 months to start effectuating change and looking at Milburn holistically from a flood perspective. We have several areas of the township that are subject to flooding. It's not just South Mountain, although South Mountain is certainly the one that has historically been most impacted by severe weather events, but also the downtown, the Glenwood section, and other spot locations. Milburn is a, picturesquely situated at the base of South Mountain Reservation. However, that certainly serves as a conduit for fast moving water on the west branch of the Rahway River. This can tend to be problematic by having the topography that we have, certainly throughout the Glenwood section. Some people also forget that the Passaic River also runs through Milburn up by JFK. So there's a lot of water in town. And so, there's a lot of different flumes and different things throughout the township to try to convey that water effectively. But in times of severe weather, certainly we experience flooding and sometimes damaging floods. And so we want to make sure that we are up here and as a township well prepared, and that we are now educating and bringing to light to our residents to be well prepared as well. So that flood mitigation advisory committee has already started work on drainage projects in the South Mountain area, as well as evaluating and going over problem areas such as Glenwood, Meadowbrook, the diversion works, the downtown area, and has just done an immense amount of effort. They meet twice a month, once for the public. These are on Wednesdays, so I encourage anybody who wants to get involved to listen in on those meetings, to become involved, but can't thank that group enough in terms of what they've started to do and bringing flood mitigation and flood issues to the forefront of the township. So we're going to start off with the fire department very quickly and go over what they do in preparation as well as during and post storm, so that we know how the FD responds. Rob?
One of the first things we can go over is just a basic emergency kit, something you can have at your ready at home. This is mine that I'll go through, very basic. I didn't bring everything. This sits in my basement on top of a case of water next to a box of granola bars. Used to keep the food in the bag, then when you go to need it, it's expired or no good. So now it sits on top of a case of water next to a case of granola bars or something, just some basic food to get you through the first couple days. It's not doomsday prepping, it's a basic emergency kit. So it starts with a couple rechargeable flashlight, glow sticks, and some basic throwaway flashlights, real super cheap. I have 3 kids and a wife, everyone needs their own. So the glow sticks are good for the kids, they can play, light up the area. Again, basic needs. Hand sanitizer. Multiple phone chargers, right? One for the car, one for electric, an emergency battery powered one-time use emergency battery. Pen and paper. Box of crayons for my youngest. I have 2 daughters, 13 and 14. They need the power cords. My little guy. Just very basic, quick and easy. Basic first aid kit. Toiletries. Rubber gloves. Masks. That's it. Besides my case of water and my box of granola bars that are there for this time being, that's all I need for the first couple days, right? Depending on the issue that you do have, you know, the food in your fridge should last a day or 2. Depending if you have power, you can utilize what you have before it goes bad. And this is in case of emergency. Everyone knows, grab the black bag on top of the water. They have flashlights if there's power outages, stuff like that. With me being on the fire department, I might be gone for a day or 2. Everyone in the house knows they grab this, get out of the house if they have to, or they can just hunker down until power comes on. I do live in town, Main Street, one of the few houses right before Springfield border. I lose power constantly. Not a Milburn problem, usually a Springfield problem next to the gas station, causes power to go out quite often. So we use this, rechargeable batteries, throwaway flashlights, very basic, quick and easy. Everyone knows where it is.
So what do we do at the fire department? Well, the first thing we do is we're always monitoring the weather conditions, especially during the storm season, the summer, the hurricane season as well. In my office, I have the weather channel on. If you've ever been to my office, it's on like 24/7. So that's one of the main things we do is just keep an eye on things to see if there is any systems out there, where they're heading, if they're heading this way, or is it going to rain on Monday? We have a contract with WeatherWorks. We get official weather reports every day. So we similar to Public Works too, they get the same report, and we just try to stay on top of any weather that's coming, whether it's rain, snow, wind, or just heat in general. The next thing we do for storm preparation is that we get all our gear ready. All of our storm pumps. We have gas pumps. We have and DPW in a little bit will go in more detail about the pumps. We have similar pumps. Our pumps are mainly for interior flooding of basements and homes. We have some exterior pumps as well. We have gas powered pumps. And we make sure that everything's just ready to go. Everything's gassed up. All the power cords are ready, and we just have all our go kits ready. We have a trailer that houses all that equipment, and we just make sure that that's normally it's here at Town Hall. We make sure it's at the firehouse ready to go, hooked up to a pickup truck. All our vehicles, make sure that they're all fueled and ready to go as well. We have a dozen generators or 2 dozen.
Yeah, we probably have about a dozen. We probably have about a dozen gas powered generators that can power the electric pumps that are also on the trailer, ready to go in event of power outages in a water event.
Yeah, and our fire trucks all have generators as well. We get those ready, make sure they're fueled, and then staffing is the big thing, is make sure that we have adequate personnel working that day. I always lean more, my decisions always have extra, because at the height of the storm is not the time to be looking for staffing. People do not live in this community, they live outside of the community as well. So it takes them a long time to come in, and also they're affected as well. If the trees are down, it's gonna take them longer to get back. So we always staff appropriately for the event to make sure that it can meet the needs of the community. We get the boat ready. We have a inflatable boat right now. We make sure that that's inflated, ready to go. We just purchased a flat bottom aluminum boat, which is gonna be delivered sometime this week with a motor. We're also in the process right now of being trained in water awareness, swift water awareness, and also swift water operations. We're also going to conduct boat training for operator training, have that certification, all that. So really, it's about just heightened alert, preparedness with all our equipment, make sure that we're ready to go and have the staffing, and just wait until the storm comes in, and hopefully it just misses us. And that's kind of what we do at the firehouse.
The police department's normally prepared. What we kind of try to do is bring some extra people in, like Rob said. We have great communication between the three divisions here, and we definitely try to prep for these storms. And basically our prep is getting some extra cones into the cars, some extra flares, some tape so we can close some things off, make sure that everything's fully gassed. We also have a few generators, but our generators are kind of limited to when a traffic light goes out. We'll be able, instead of leaving an officer there dragging out stop signs. We have one guy that doesn't mind using his fingers to test if things are alive, and if they're not, he'll normally hook the generator up so we can at least get power to some of these traffic lights. And we know the ones that continually go out, Short Hills Avenue, and actually South Orange. For some reason, South Orange and Old Short Light loves to go out. All right, we part of our duties is definitely to barricade the roads. Now we're going to barricade roads with some cones. We're going to put caution tape up. We're going to put barrels out. We have literally barricades that are 2x6 by 8 foot long with legs on it. People still manage to drive around them, and we have to stress the fact that the road's barricaded for a reason. It's barricaded because there's some type of danger, whether it be a flooding condition, whether it be a wire down. We need you to stay basically away from that particular area. Normally, if we have enough manpower, we'll stage an officer with that item. But let's face it, with those last couple of storms, we were running around crazy, kind of. I pulled some stats up, and just real quick, in 2019, for the same dates of September 1st through the 4th, we responded to 253 calls for service. That time frame in 2021 for Ida, it was 403 calls. We towed 63 cars off the street. So our guys were very, very busy. It's not us physically towing them, but we still have reports to write. We have to account for these cars. And, you know, we came up with a plan. We took the cars that were abandoned and put them in one spot instead of tying up the tow truck, so we can get things moving a lot faster. But again, it's a lot, these things we have to do. Now, the priority, stay in your home, do not venture out. That's one of the best ones you could do. I'm sure somebody else is going to highlight the reasoning why that you need to stay there, but it really is the safest place. With that said, 911, please don't call 911 for your power's out or you have no phone landline. If you have a life-threatening emergency, that's what it's there for. Because I've been in the dispatch center when 911 has gone off, and it's no treat up there. They bring extra people in, but it's extremely difficult when they're trying to cover 3 different towns with calls for service for all those towns: fire, police, power out, EMS. It gets very difficult, extremely difficult. Now, the other last one, stay out of motor vehicles. Well, that's obvious. I mean, we towed 63 cars. That took an officer off the street from responding to other calls. Please stay out of your car, because all you're going to do is, you think you have water, you can make it through. Well, 63 people didn't make it through the water. Okay. That's pretty much all I have.
So,
Yeah, so we're, obviously you see us out there preparing for the events. We also, like the police and fire, we have barricades, we have cones. You know, we check all of our pipes and grates, which are, you know, stream and water channels that we know that we check. That picture that shows it there, we check the east branch and the west branch of the Rahway River to make sure that, and we, like the fire chief said, I'm the tree guy at heart, so I'm always watching the weather, not just for storms, but for wind, because wind usually brings trees down. So we go check to make sure that the trees are not blocking the flow of the stream. We do that quite regularly. Any chance that we can get, we go do that. Like all the other departments that said, you know, we have our own generators, we have our own pumps, we have electric pumps, gas pumps, diesel pumps. All the things that you see us out there doing, having all of our equipment ready. You know, we have a bucket truck, we have chippers, we have loaders, trucks for loading debris. I'm sure you all saw us out there for weeks on end, cleaning all the debris up. So we get all that equipment ready for any event, any major event. So.
yeah, so I think the point here is that there's a lot of preparation, there's a lot of thought that goes into pre-storm. Generally speaking, we'll be meeting, discussing what our response is going to be based on the event itself. Every event is unique. You know, Ed brings up the point about people staying home, staying out of their cars, not trying to get around. And sometimes that is even when you're already in your car, finding a safe place. I remember during Ida, I was out on Essex Street and the same car kept circling, trying to find their way out. And I finally stopped them. I said, look, right there at Wells Fargo, just have a stop. Just go there, listen to some music, hang out, wait it out. Sometimes if you're not home, still, it's important to try to find a safe place and stay there, because trying to venture out in a storm like that, trying to get through high water, trying to think that you might be able to make it. And we have a bunch of images up here. And I think this is a really, really important one for people to understand, is that it's not worth it. Turn around, don't drown. Everybody's heard it. You know, 6 inches of water has the ability to move your car or make you lose control, knock you off your feet. 2 feet of water is going to move your car. It's going to move an SUV. You don't want to get into a situation where you're trying to make it home and you think you can make it and just to be swept away. I think the fire department and DPW, a vast majority of their rescues were from people in vehicles. And so it's really just one of those things. And Ida hit at a very inconvenient time. I mean, they're always all inconvenient, but in particular, it was busy. People were still out, they were still doing things. And so part of our preparation as individuals, as our preparation as OEM, is to understand too, what we're going to do in various situations, not just in a rainstorm, but in a rainstorm during this time. Where can I go to stay safe? So one of the questions that was given to us prior to this was, you know, in the event of a storm, what can we do with our vehicles prior to that storm if we're in a flood prone area? Most times during an emergency, what you'll hear is that the town will declare a local state of emergency. What that means is that, you know, we're not sort of out there enforcing overnight parking. We want everybody to do the thing that keeps them most safe or keeps their stuff most safe. So in that situation, we open up the parking deck. We allow people to park on the street, especially in a rain event if they're on high ground. We can't tell you necessarily to park on private property, but certainly find a location that you can park at. The most important thing is that you keep your property safe, that you get to a safe place, you know, with your vehicle, and prepare. And that's a sign of preparation. So, you know, and I think that, you know, just in general, the more we all do to prepare for storms, and sort of think about how we're going to react in storms, the better. I mean, certainly our response during a storm is an emergency, right? And we can answer questions about that and we can go through that. But, you know, everybody is doing everything they can to make sure that the public is safe, that people are safe, and that property is as safe as it can be. the post-storm is where it becomes pretty complicated. Because there is there's an extreme need immediately post-storm. And I can let the fire department and DPW in particular speak about that post-storm need, because what it becomes then is no longer I need to be safe. I want to feel safe, or, get me out of where I'm at, that type of stuff, which, certainly that's why we have public safety departments, police, fire, DPW. You may recall that DPW was driving around in front end loaders during Ida with 2 firemen on the front, rescuing people out of stores, out of vehicles, things like that. But, after the storm, it becomes a much different type of operation. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, because each department has a different role in that. And I think it's important for people to understand. I am going to just backtrack one moment, because there was also another question that was asked about preparation prior to a storm. In the past, we have not necessarily sort of availed or made available sandbags. We've had a discussion. That is something that we are going to offer going forward. We're going to make sure that the Public Works Department is set up for sandbags, but this is going to be communicated when these are available. This isn't just, one rainstorm and you can have a sandbag. We'll take questions at the end, ma'am. Thank you. So we'll make sandbags available, but people have to come fill them. The bags will be available, the sand will be available, and we'll let the residents know when that is available. It's just not going to be at, any storm. It's going to be a significant storm where people are going to need that. And certainly businesses too in the downtown and anybody who might require that. But anyway, just want to get into a little bit of post-storm recovery and what we do and how we do it, because, sometimes the prioritization can seem confusing, why we do certain things. But I can tell you that everybody up here has a rhyme, a reason, a system, and it's very important why they do those things as well. So Rob, I don't know if you want to start with the fire department.
So our number 1 priority is life and safety, post-storm, during storm, and all those things. So like Captain Blazinski was saying, the first thing that happens is that the phone board automatically just lights up. 911 lights up, and then everybody starts calling all the non-emergency numbers. So that right there just creates a whole different issue. But with life safety is we take those calls and we start prioritizing who needs help the quickest, who's trapped in vehicles, who's trapped in businesses, restaurants, or in their homes. And that's where we start, is we want to make sure everybody who didn't get out is safe. And then we provide them an opportunity to get out via front end loaders. We just ordered a high water rescue truck, which should be here in the next month or so before the beginning of the season, the storm season. We have the boats, and so our main goal is just get to those areas and get people out that did not get out. And then our next priority is other calls that come in. Most of the times you're going to have gas leaks. You're going to have hazardous materials that are flowing through the streets and the homes. You have, if it's a wind event, sometimes with the rain event, you have power lines are down, or you just have utility lines are down. And then our massive response is after the life safety issues are taken care of is the recovery, is pumping of water out in the basements or in the backyards. And then Chris later on will talk more about that process and how we go about that. But life safety is number 1. All the other calls that come in, we put them in the queue. If you call once, it's enough. You don't need to call 5 or 8 times to see, did we get the call? If you called, we put you in the computer system and we're there. What happens is some residents will call 10, 12 times, and that creates 12 different incidents. And we have to go out each time to make sure everything's okay. So that too also adds to the workload. But life safety is our number 1 priority. Make sure everybody's safe, and then everything else falls after that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Rob. And I've been in the fire department when we've been answering calls, and you certainly understand, in the height of a storm or an emergency, individuals will call. you know, and we've been involved in sort of snowstorms and wind where branches are coming down. Well, if branches are coming down, we understand. Now, if a tree hits your house, that's a totally different situation, right? Or if or if there's a live wire on the ground. But, you know, we'd get calls that branches are in, you know, in their yard, right? And that, you know, big branch, you know, somebody needs to come pick it up. And then you get several calls about that. And so part of it is just making sure that, because we want to respond as effectively as possible, to make sure that, you know, we're not queuing up several calls. Now, if that situation changes, then certainly that warrants another call. But checking up on the status during a storm, you know, I think what was you know, the Ida was like, you guys were stacked at almost like what? How many calls? 150, 200 calls that you had to respond to.
We did over 600 calls,
Right.
But stacked in the queue was just, there was probably like another 600.
Right.
I think a 911 system, I believe was what, for all the 3 towns was almost 3,000 or 4,000, I think.
Right.
All queued up.
So, you know, it's just one of those, it's one of those things that you certainly understand. And we're going to give some other numbers during the storm that are non-emergency numbers that will help sort of alleviate the 911 system, which is really important, so that when people are in crisis or when they are in a life-threatening or emergency situation, that they're getting through and that they're able to get the response that's necessary.
So just reading off of that, recovery takes time. Believe me, I know that pretty well. I live downstream of Milburn, so whatever happens here happens at home. Nothing's going to happen really fast. We're going to make sure everybody's safe, get everybody out, and then recovery kicks in. Pumping out, we begin with the exterior of the home, then we move to the interior. Again, it takes a while to pump out a basement. It's not something that happens really fast. Sometimes we'll have 1 pump or 2 pumps deployed into the basement, and you got to remember, it's all you know, thousands of gallons potentially in your basement on top of what's in the soil outside. So when we're pumping out your basement, we're pretty much pumping out the property around you, and that just takes time. And it takes a lot of manpower, it takes a lot of equipment and coordination. And then we do the DPW will talk about more about the clearing debris. But on the OEM level, our main priority after life safety is damage assessment, preliminary damage assessment. We have 24 hours to get back to the state on a preliminary assessment of the community. We use a software called Crisis Track. It has all of the properties in town, GPS organized, and it has all the value, it has all that. We just have to send staffing out to do that damage assessment. We did very well last time. I think we did it in I think it was 8 or 9 hours. And then we gave the county a number. And that again, just adds to the workload that, you know, all of the workforce is doing. But that is key because, and I like to say that Milburn was the leading force behind Essex County getting a declaration last storm, because we were organized, we had the software, and we did the work. Originally, Essex County was not included in the declaration. It was later on that did, but I like to say it was part of Milburn's, the hard work that we all did, that those, you know, 2 or 3 days after that, is to get that number and say, hey, we meet that threshold here at Milburn.
So, John and Tom, can you just speak a little bit to clearing debris post-storm?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of the part that we do at DPW is, you know, constant communication with the fire department, constant communication with the police department. We're also getting our calls at the Department of Public Works. So we are going out, you know, with the other agencies and assessing. Our main goal is getting the roads open. You know, besides public safety and helping assist with, we have pumps too, so we work coordinated with the fire department also. So basically, as again, you saw us out there in Ida, we were, thank God there was no high wind for this incident, so we didn't have to take all the road guys and all of our crews cutting the trees out of the way. So there was a bright thing on our side, but it was all the debris that was brought out to the street. So we constantly reassess the needs, what needs to be moved. We constantly pick it up and haul it to a specified place to get rid of it. And again, people, as we clear the streets, people would bring more stuff out. So we're always reassessing the damage and seeing how we can get the roads open. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Ditto to that. He mentioned opening roads and no wind, but the mud, that's just as bad as trees down and closing roads. And we do our hardest post-storm to open roads and actually give life back to the township so people can actually get to where they have to go. If they own a business in town and they have to get there and do their own assessments, we try to open the roads and get them in here at a safe point. Usually the fire department will assess when people can go back to their home into a business and see what's going on. We will assist residents with pumping backyards. We try to get there before it reaches a house, but Floyd, Irene, Ida, they're so dangerous. We just assist the other entities with life-threatening issues, people stuck in a house, people stuck in cars, stranded somewhere. We will bring our large machines out, firemen, and into the bucket they go. We remove them. And it's from the front side to the back side of the storm. It's all about helping the public and getting life back into everybody's life.
Thank you. All right, let's get into a little bit of what we can do on an individual level, and from a resident level. Certainly, you know, I want to stress that now is the time. Right? Now is the time. Do not wait. Do not wait until June 1st. Do not wait until you see the signs of the first hurricane. Do not wait until a storm gets your anxiety up and that you're feeling you know, concerned about something. Do it now. Get ready. Milburn does flood. We've gone through it. You know, most of the people in the room here and sure online have been through it. And so you understand it. So now if you're not prepared, prepare now. And I'll just continue to say that. Chris has gone over one of the most important things you can do, which is prepare a kit. Preparing a kit, there's an immense amount of resources on the internet. There's no sort of dearth in finding what you need to find when it comes to preparation for a storm. We want to make sure that we as a community are all prepared. And so I think if there's one thing any of us can stress up here is get prepared. You know, just make that kit, find out what you need to put in that kit, you know, think about what sort of documents you need to protect, think about, you know, how you're going to respond during a storm, what your plan is going to be, where you might go prior to a storm. All of these things are things that you can do now and you can make preparations for now. You know, one of the conversations that I've had over the last few months is, you know, people say, well, what should I do if I'm nervous about being in my house during a storm? You know, and I think one of the solutions was, you know, find a friend, right? Find a friend that you think you can go stay with, ride out a storm with, grab a bottle of wine, go hang out with, you know, maybe they're uphill or something like that. But making that plan now and having that conversation now is really important. You know, the other thing when you prepare a kit is knowing where it is. I think Chris mentioned multiple times that his entire family knows where that kit is. That's really important. It's also really important not to put the kit somewhere where it's going to be flooded or where it's not going to become usable. My kit is, because I do also live in a 500-year flood zone, my kit is in my attic. So everybody knows where that is as well. And so, you know, you want to make sure that you're communicating all these things with your family, that you have a sit down, that your kids know, just like you used to practice with fire drills, you know, and you'd say to your kids, all right, this is our meeting spot. Same thing, you know, with when it comes to flood or storm preparation, you want to have all these things in place. And certainly I'm sure questions will come up for us as to, you know, other things that we do as a community and stuff like that. But I just want from an individual level, you know, for everybody to start thinking about, you know, what it is you can do now. John had brought over one of these pumps. You know, we do a lot of pumping out of basements, a lot of pumping out of backyards post storm, and there's only so much that can go around. right? And certainly we make every effort. We spend days upon days responding to calls for pumping out. And, I think that an important thing for the public to understand is that we cannot pump out if there's water outside of the basement. It just doesn't make sense. And it's also a safety issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a whole physics thing, right? Pressure on the outside of the foundation wall, you release pressure by pumping out the inside, you have the ability to collapse the basement. So if the water has not subsided outside, you won't get anybody to pump out your basement. And that's also something to keep in mind. If you decide that you want to go out to Home Depot or you want to go on Amazon, you want to buy your own pump, you need to know how to use it, you need to understand it, but it's also a tool that you can use as well. Should the water be outside, down outside your home, you can certainly pump out your own home. Just thinking about what things that you might need or might want during a storm. Now, Chris had brought up chargers, really important thing. We were fortunate in Ida not to lose power, but we've been in a storm where we've lost power. Irene was probably more significant in that sense, that not only was it flooding, but it was power loss, and it was power loss for a significant amount of time. And so making sure that you're prepared with chargers. Recently just went on Amazon and purchased a solar powered charger. You can charge obviously in the wall, but it's also solar powered, and it has every type of adapter on it so that you can just use that. It also acts as a strobe. It also acts as a light. Finding things like that, tools that you can use, things that you can have in your emergency kits and provide for your family and be able to respond to yourself, I think are really important. The other thing is other ways that you can prep your house and make sure that now you're looking about how you can prep your house. So John has served on the roads department for a really long time, as he had mentioned. And John is also someone who has responded in the past to sewer backups, right? So can you just explain a little bit about what people can do in their home to prevent that type of incident? Because look, in a storm, the storm sewers, the stormwater system, the sewers, they will surcharge. There's infiltration, there's things that happen. So what is a way that you can protect your home? What is a way that you can protect your property? So John can talk a little bit about that.
So there's so many different names. The simplest thing, it's called a check valve. It's a one-way valve that will keep the larger quantity of raw sewage out of your house. The pipes are full, you're talking millions of gallons. No, you can't use your house because you'll back yourself up, but it will keep millions of gallons from attempting to enter your house. You could put them in the front lawn. You could certainly put them in the house with an inspection plate so you could see if anything has clogged it. If it's tipped open just a hair, it's not going to work. It'll be forced open. So prior to a storm, if you went down, make sure there's no hair in it, just towels, anything that could possibly open it. It will stop the street side of the water, be it a storm sewer to sanitary sewers. It will stop it from coming back. Is it foolproof? No, but it will help. That's very, very big with your lateral. You could put it anywhere in the lateral, inside, outside the house.
Thanks, John. Another thing, in terms of preparation is also, knowing the contact information, how to communicate, and how you're going to be communicated with. So just really quickly going into some of the, and certainly we'll make this presentation available, and you don't have to remember all the numbers and stuff like that, but there's a lot of important non-emergency contact information. The police department non-emergency number, the fire department non-emergency number, DPW, obviously town hall, and Jersey Central Power and Light. I think it's really important to note at this point too that in a power outage situation, you're going to call Jersey Central Power and Light and you're going to let them know that your power is out. They're going to take your information down. You're going to get a ticket number. They're going to tell you that they've received. They have a certain way in which they respond, in which they have to respond. I've been through enough power outage storms to know that it's not always the most intuitive way or how you would think they should do it or the quickest way, but understand that one, the municipality is not the power company. We do not have any control over the lights, okay? You can call us as much as you want and you can let us know that your power is out. We're truly not going to be able to help in that situation. And so, I want to, and certainly we've advocated for our residents in the past. We've gone through 15 days without power back during Sandy. It's a terrible situation. And so, you want to prepare for 72 hours, but, sometimes you also have to understand and prepare for longer than that and be ready. But these are important numbers for everybody to have handy, whether it's in your phone or, even on your fridge or, making sure that each of your kids have these numbers in their backpack or whatever it is. I think it's important that that people in your family know these numbers. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up quick, and then I think Rob can talk about the gauges and different things that people can do to keep themselves informed as well, is the Milburn Alert. So Swift 911, which is what we've always used as our reverse 911 system. This is how we communicate. I'm sure everybody gets the message about locking your cars from the police department. That is our reverse 911 system. That has changed to Milburn Alert. Same location on the website. It's actually the same company. However, if you've signed up for Swift 911, you're probably already on Milburn Alert, but we're encouraging everyone now, prior to everything happening or possibly happening, check now. Check Milburn Alert. Check to make sure you're signed up. Check to make sure all your information is correct. All the information that you want in there is correct. That the type of alerts that you want to receive are checked off and that they're in there. So again, Milburn Alert has replaced Swift 911. You click on the emergency alerts on the left-hand side of the. It's on the homepage, but as you're looking at it, it's on the left-hand side. It's just a quick button, and just go in and check the information. And if you haven't signed up, we're encouraging everybody to sign up. This is how we are going to communicate in a storm. This is the major way. Certainly the township is on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram. But the way that we are going to push out information is through this Milburn Alert, as well as those social media feeds. We always set up some sort of hub on the website. However, it's not necessarily it's not the quickest way to get information. It's not the quickest way to get information out. So just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, that has changed. So Rob, last thing, and then we can get into some questions and answers, unless there's anything else that the group wants to bring up. But if you just want to go over the gauges.
So we have the township of Milburn now has a tool to help inform residents of impending flooding. The U.S. Geological Survey has installed 3 stream gauges. One is on the West Branch, which is up on Diamond Mill Pond. There's one on the East Branch, which is down by Vauxhall Road and near Milburn Ave. And then there's one up at the New Jersey American Water Company, which will monitor water levels and provide vital data used by emergency managers and flood forecasters to help protect lives and property. In addition, these gauges enhance the township ability to alert the public to what's going on during a flood emergency. This ability to warn citizens of flooding is essential, especially in the vicinities along the Rahway River. So if you go to, and these will be posted too on the OEM page on our website, you could sign up for alerts from these gauges. And also if you go on that page too, it'll tell you historical flooding. It gives you all that data. So this is what we monitor almost every day. I take a look at it, but the alerts are set to my work phone, and I do get alerts once that gauge changes, whatever I ask it for it to do. But the alerts are critical. They could give you, if you decided to stay home, they could give you a heads up that there's a lot of water coming downstream, and then maybe at that time it'll be appropriate to leave versus staying home. It does work. They're very accurate. I get calls a lot of time during a rainstorm, even the previous one we just had on Saturday. And if you look at the gauge, you say to yourself, oh, wow, it wasn't that bad. If you look at the history of the gauge, from year to year compared to the big name storms. And again, if you navigate, there's different sections on the website you go, it pretty much goes over all those and gives you all that data.
Great, thanks, Rob. Look, at this point, we've gone over a lot of information. It's been about almost an hour. And want to make sure that we open it up and answer any questions or provide any additional information that people may be looking for. You know, again, just to sort of plug the website, the township's website has also an immense amount of information. We recently just started a flooding page, which, you know, brings some awareness not only to those that currently live here, but also those that have just moved in or are thinking about moving here. I think it's important for people to understand that and know and be able to look at that information. The Office of Emergency Management webpage also has a ton of information about preparedness, ready.gov, which is a huge resource. These gauges will be posted there. Just all kinds of information for residents to make your plan. There's a 12-step plan to be prepared, making sure that you know you've got insurance, that you've updated your insurance, that you're protecting those insurance documents, that you take pictures, send them to your phone. Most of us have them in our phone now anyway, but if you don't, make sure that you do have them in your phone. You know, things like that, things that, you know, we could spend 4 or 5 hours talking about here, but it's just best to go and sort of navigate and check it out and look at it and see it and see what applies to you and just, you know, work on your own preparation. So with that, you know, we're here. You want to ask questions, you know, please get up one at a time. If there's people online that want to ask questions, certainly raise your hand. We're not going to put any sort of restrictions on it. This is very informal. Just, you know, come up and ask your question. Please just be respectful of everybody's time, and we're happy to answer anything you need.
I live on Ridgewood and Cypress, and my house is actually getting hit with a 12-foot wave every time we have a bad storm, which is really made worse because the street isn't blocked off, the cars go through, and now that all that water is coming on my house, which then floods the whole neighborhood. Last time, for whatever the reason, the water company didn't finish the road, left it open. The road actually exploded. And that revealed that there is no piping down Cypress Street, only to the middle. After that, it just runs under pebbles. So is there any way to avoid having a wave hit the house? I mean, it was 12 feet high.
But John, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm sure you have some familiarity with the area and understand the Cypress Street. I mean, look, you know, not knowing enough about the situation or the drainage in the area, but certainly as we continue to evaluate things from Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee standpoint, this might be an area that we haven't identified yet that we should look at and evaluate. But you know, DPW and engineering is always they're always looking at drainage throughout the township.
Put in 2 more drains, but that's the problem. This is an old neighborhood. There's only one pipe going to the middle of the street, not all the way down the street. So what happens now is it can't handle it. It backs up to my house. That's what's happening. I mean, you actually put in 2 new drains, and even that's not helping because it's just too much water.
Correct. There are 2 extra drains in place on Ridgewood Road. I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, there was a downpour at the end of my workday. I couldn't even get out of my truck and walk into the house. And all of a sudden there's police going up the street and I couldn't figure out why. I'm just sitting in my truck and it stops raining. And I get out and I look down the street and sure enough, under the railroad, there's a box culvert. It's probably 8 feet high, 12 feet wide, and the water is gushing out of it. Wow, I've never seen that happen before. So the water starts to recede and there is a ton of debris. So there's a trash rack that goes across before it goes under the road. and that's to catch debris to block the pipe. So the pipe will always stay operational, but it was so much debris that it clogged and it went up and over, and the pipe was not functioning. Next day, we cleaned it all out and we took a walk up to the Glen Avenue side, and somebody just felt like cutting a bunch of trees down and left it all. And there was a ton of waste, but it's something we would find prior to Floyd, prior to an Irene and an Ida, because we walk them and we look at them. On an everyday basis, it is private property and we do not check them. So debris can be a real hazard for other people. The pipe instead that goes down Cypress, it passes a chamber underneath Ridgewood Road into a pipe. The pipe is 36 inches in circumference. It travels down to an elliptical pipe, which is 48 inches, and it empties into the east rawway that comes out of Maplewood.
But it's too much water.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I don't think we're going to answer your direct question right now, what we're going to do, but I think that there's an understanding here. I know that there's members of the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee that are evaluating things, and I'm sure would be would take a look at that. And certainly there's an awareness here of that, but sometimes also things happen because, you know, whether it's a duty of care by people, you know, in and around certain conveyances, or whether there's a blockage or just something that happens. There's not always a permanent reason that can fix it. So
I asked one question.
you can go ahead.
You were talking about the sandbags. In my own research, I found out there's something called flood barriers. There's a company in Connecticut that makes various types of flood barriers. So if you wanted to block off a large area, they make a bigger barrier. Another neighbor and myself have bought these little, they're like sandbags, but what they do is when the water hits it, they expand. And you can get them at Home Depot.
Thank you. No, we're certainly aware of that, and that's a good private solution as long as what you're doing doesn't impact others.
Exactly.
I think it's really important, and that's why sandbags generally have been, you know, used. They're there to butt up against your house, your door, your garage door, whatever it might be, to try to keep the water out.
That's the thing. You can't put it against the house, because if you put it against the house, then the force of the water is going to go push things into the house. So they had an engineer at this company who figured out how to put it on my property so that the water doesn't congregate on both sides, or one side or the other. And he draws it for you and shows you how to put it down.
Great.
Another idea I had was, the last time you were talking about the trees down, we had a tree come down, took all the wires down. What we didn't know was there's an order in which they will clear that. And if it's not cleared properly, then the electrical can't be connected. It took us about a week and a half to discover this. Suddenly somebody, and I know you were real busy, somebody showed up from out of the blue, cut up the tree and took it away. And then we got service. But they had gone by several times and they weren't going to touch it because nobody took the tree away. But the whole thing, the whole point was there's an order to which it's supposed to be cleared. I mean, I don't know who knew this, but we did. We sure found out. But that's one of the things.
Yeah, well, that the addressing is the utility industry. They have standards, and there's things that we as public works, tree crews and road personnel cannot even touch until we're told by the electric company that it's de-energized. So there's a lot of scenarios where we're actually probably one of the few municipalities that our guys are qualified to work near the wires. It's a state statute.
Right.
So we actually do a lot of the work that we can with the limited resources, assisting utilities to clear that so they can get to the power lines. So there's a lot of rules and regulations on what you can and can't do.
We actually had to have a guard, and the electric company hired guards from Texas to come up, and you know, they put positions it off. And do you know this woman comes in a little car and she went right under that barrier and almost right over it, and he had to go chasing after her.
Yeah, so there are rules, but we do our best in any given situation to work with the utilities and just to make it quicker so we can get the power back on.
So that was another idea. I mean, I know you people work very, very hard. So what I was thinking of, last time the fire department came around, went house to house. Now, that must take a long time. So what I was thinking of, how about having a captain, block captain or something? And could assess things before they even get there, and then it might be easier. So,
No, I appreciate that point. I think that has been explored in the past, in terms of block captains. You know, again, I think that, you know, first step is are there things that individuals can mitigate on their own? And then how can we help in terms of recovery and pumping out and stuff like that? But anytime that information can be funneled through one individual as opposed to 30 or 40, that's always helpful. Appreciate that though.
thank you.
Anyone else in the room? All right.
Thank you. This is a very valuable evening, so I want to thank everybody on the panel. I want to ask you a hypothetical. So there's Category 3 hurricane making its way up the coast. And we know this about 3 or 4 days out. Alex knows exactly where I'm going with these questions. What I would like to know as a hurricane veteran here in town is who are you talking to up and downstream? And then also at what points do you make determinations such as emptying Taylor Park Pond? I would love to see the Orange Reservoir, if not emptied, lowered so that we could have have it function as a detention basin. And then also to the chief, for those of us in South Mountain who are gauge watchers, which ones alarm you? So I did not know about Diamond Mill. I watch East and West. And so in an event like that, what are you looking at to see how we might experience flooding in the town?
So, yeah, if you look at, if you went to that website, the gauge gives you, I think it goes back 20 years. So you can see the pattern. I think it even goes back further than that. But at every storm that we've had, Irene, Floyd, all those are there. And you can see the pattern where the gauges normally are and what occurs when those storms hit and then they go back down. So you set your alerts based on those things. But that's just for preparation purposes. Like you should definitely have a plan. You should have, as the one resident was talking about, is try to mitigate things on your own for your own home and your neighbors and all that stuff. You know what, the gauges are a tool that we use just to try to stay ahead of the curve. But it's only just one tool of many other things that we do as well.
But would that inform your decision about, let's say, Taylor Park, if you're lowering the pond, or you have to start talking to other communities?
So I can tell you that those decisions are made much earlier than that.
Okay.
So by the time you see a rise in the river, it's raining, it's, you know, everybody are already getting nervous, that type of thing. Decisions about Taylor Park Pond and DPW may be able to speak to it a little bit more are made earlier than that. So we know it's going to rain today, they'll start entering Taylor Park. You know, or you know it's going to rain a few days from now. The problem with Taylor Park is that obviously it will fill up again based on the rain as well. It's not a sort of a surefire way of, you know, creating detention. But it certainly does help, and it certainly gives you time. A lot of stuff when it comes to floods, it's also about time. Can you gain a little bit more time? So you know, I watch different gauge. I watch the Springfield gauge. That's the one that I just have over the period of time watched, more so because it actually, you know, that gauge shows the flood stage, that when the river you know is peaking. So but probably certainly better to, you know, what Rob had mentioned, the east and the west, and also the New Jersey American Water one. In terms of the Orange Reservoir, that has historically been a county/Orange decision. You know, I know that back during Sandy, they actually had made that collective decision to lower the reservoir. Now, as everybody understands, like Sandy was not necessarily a rain event for us. That was all wind. And so the communities, Cranford, us, Springfield, like everybody has the conversation and talks about, whether the Orange Reservoir should be lowered. It's never going to be emptied. But whether it should be, because you got to understand too, and I hope that, and I know you do, Sarah, but like Orange Reservoir is actually a reservoir. It does provide water to the city of Orange. It has the ability to, if it wanted to. And also it's still an ecosystem, right? So the ability to drain that completely is just not there. And it's also not our property, right? It's theirs to control. So, but they're receptive to making that decision and lowering it. But it is their decision. It's their people that will lower it, not ours. So, but yeah, all those things in terms of a category 3 coming up the coast and being, staring us down 4 days out, those things happen. Just like Sandy, that decision was made in the face of Sandy because we thought for sure this was going to be a significant rain event for Milburn. And those decisions were made, and it didn't end up being that way. But you're not making those decisions just because, or you're not making those decisions thinking it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it pans out or not. You have to make those decisions prior to all of that because it takes a few days. And what you don't want to do is create flooding by emptying water. So you need to make sure that you're doing that ahead of time.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Do you guys want to talk about Taylor Park a little bit? Like just because I know, one, the dam has changed, but that now we have a bypass on that, and that we do empty that quite a bit, in the face of the rain event. So.
Taylor Park actually gets opened and emptied more often than you think. Definitely big events. It's days in advance it's empty. It's a very small pond. It's going to fill up almost immediately anyway. But the overflow pipes are wide open. The drains that are in the floor, we sent guys out there with floatables on. They were in, I think it was over 2 feet of mud that was in the bottom, and they dug it all out, cleaned all the drains out, made sure there was no debris, and they were wide open. And I think they were open for multiple days afterwards, just to make sure the smallest rain event with your streams that are swollen could flood again. But it's open. If you think it's going to be 1 to 2 inches of rain in an hour, it's open.
Alex, I just add one thing on that. So on the OEM side, what happens is when we hear that there's a Cat 3 coming up and it's heading northeast, on the state OEM level, they already activate the State Operations Center out of Trenton, and they give all the counties and the municipalities updates every day, probably twice a day. We notify the LEPC too. We push all those updates out. As the storm gets closer, then Essex County activates their emergency management center as well. And then the sheriff and those folks would meet almost every day, whether it's Zoom or a phone call. So we're constantly communicating with our state partners, our county partners, and our local neighbors around here, Summit, Milburn, Springfield, and so forth and so on. So from day one, once we know that, we're already behind the scenes, already talking and communicating and seeing where this is heading and what's going to happen, stuff like that.
Good evening, Jeffrey Feld. First, I want to thank you all for the service that you've given to, especially in Ida, where these two gentlemen went to work at around 8:30 that September 1st night. But I have some make suggestions about being proactive. I know when there's a windstorm, my wife sleeps in the basement. She's afraid of big trees. Is there a way maybe you could help assess, especially I live in the poet section, we have many large trees, especially with like the white, diseases, to help assess, maybe telling people that you do have sick trees that can be removed, being proactive, you could help us with your special expertise. Now, I want to go back to Ida. I think I want to help you. In your professional judgment, you said we want cars off the streets. and I had this conversation with Alex. I should never have been in this room on September 1st and not at 7 o'clock. You knew a storm was coming with the severity, and at 7:30, when all the alarms went off on every phone, how can we, again, be proactive? You know a storm is gonna happen, that you override the local governing body and say, you don't have a meeting tonight because of what we're gonna have. Because how many of your rescues, we know our mayor was rescued, we could have avoided. That I want to help you, saying that there are certain times when we know an emergency is gonna happen, that you have to override the local governing body for the safety of everyone in this community. Because there were too many people in this room that were put on the road, they shouldn't have ever been on the road. Because it really started pouring around 6:30 at night. I mean, that's when the clouds come, and then I think your gauges. Because I remember, Alex, you had to run out of the room at 8:15 to respond to the chief, because he was rescuing people up on, I think, where the road meet on,
No, he was in the fire department. He
But
just,
he
he
was-
just saw the water coming.
no, but one of the people with phones, I want to be, there's certain times when they're proactive, you know it's gonna rain. They're talking about forecasts, and tell the local governing body, for safety purposes, you don't have a meeting tonight. And that's one of the things that I think, if I can help you, because we have to rely on your professional judgment, and that sometimes has to override the judgment of the local discretion of the local government body. Thank you.
So, there we go. We put all the information out, and as a resident of Cranford that floods, that information's out there, but it's not mandatory that you evacuate. It's not mandatory that you heed those warnings. You can't be arrested or physically
It's not getting
removed
into back.
No.
from your house for those things. So me personally, like at home, they knock on my door and say, hey, you have to leave. I'm not leaving. It's, I'm gonna stay there and fight and protect my home. But the information is certainly out there.
I'm just saying in situations that you're gonna have a meeting.
I'd like to respond to what you said, Mr. Phillip, all right? Just so that we can, so first and foremost, and certainly as you experienced during Ida, okay? There was a lot of activity going on, not just a governing body meeting. There were people out to dinner, there were people working, there were people commuting, there were people traveling, there were people going to wherever they were going, right? Certainly in that particular situation, and I think everybody can attest to this when it comes to Ida, is that Ida was something that no one expected, okay? In the sense that, right, we knew rain was coming, but we did not know that 7.5, almost 8 inches was gonna fall in 3 hours, 3.5 hours, okay? So it's difficult to say, well, we should have overrode the local governing body and not had a meeting. I think what, and hindsight is always 20/20, right? What we should have done in that situation is stop the meeting and everybody stayed here.
Now,
Rode out the storm.
I agree with you. Now, I say we learn from our mistakes. Failure is pre-success. I'm just trying to say that we should learn for what we've accomplished, what we witnessed, what we went through everywhere in the community, that we work together, that we don't get people who almost drowned that night going home from the meeting.
Anyone else in the room? Jesse, you got a couple hands up there?
Good evening. This is Deputy Mayor Diane Eglo. I want to thank you for holding this panel tonight. The number one thing that I could really not more strongly recommend is everyone get FEMA insurance. Find out if you are eligible to have the FEMA insurance. Makes all the difference for after the incident. The other thing is, I don't know if you covered this because my internet's going in and out. We have Xfinity working in the neighborhood today. When one time you gave the reverse 911 call to people to move their cars to higher ground, cars are very difficult to replace now. They're very expensive. I think if you can at least protect your car, it's another thing that you should do in advance. And Alex, as I emailed you yesterday, I was walking at the reservoir. We have to keep working with the county and East Orange to keep the logs out of the Diamond Mill Pond. Those logs are what traveled down past the paper mill that clogged Millburn Township. So if we can keep working with the county as Sarah said, to make sure we can lower the reservoir in advance when it's applicable, but we've got to make sure all the waterways are maintained and kept clear, the same way the joint meeting does down behind Ridgewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I think the one point that you brought up that we hadn't brought up actually is really important is the insurance question. You know, there are a lot of areas in town that are designated X, which is a 500-year flood zone. And I think that sometimes when people see that, they assume that it is a possibility. Or I believe it's a, but more so it's not a compulsory or a mandatory purchase or of flood insurance. But I would say that in today's day and age, and as things continue to ramp up, and as we continue to experience more weather events and flooding and some severity in those, is that those that are in 500-year flood zones really evaluate seriously getting flood insurance. And whether it's federally backed, that certainly is a good thing. And, but just explore it, talk to a broker, talk to your friends, talk to those that have it, crowdsource, I know that on Facebook, people generally ask for recommendations, whatever it is, but explore it. Don't just say, because I'm not being made to get it, I'm not going to get it. Just explore it. And certainly, get it if a lot of people shy away from it due to the premiums or whatever, but I think that it's just something that you have to do. And certainly we get people that will ask, do I need flood insurance? I live in this area and stuff like that. One, it's very difficult for us to make that type of judgment for you. But my response would be is if you're asking the question, you probably should have it. Who you got there?
Hi, hi, this is Lim from Ridgewood Road, and thanks very much for the session. Just wondering if you can we have a recommended list of items that goes into our emergency kits? Maybe put out only plus page. That would be super useful.
Sure. Just can you bring up I think there's the ready.gov link on our presentation. But I think there's quite an extensive list on the ready.gov website. Yeah, see disaster supply kit.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So and so this will offer you a checklist of those items. And certainly some will apply, some will not, but I think, the rule of thumb that I've always heard is have enough water and have enough food for 72 hours. And then anything else like this, and Captain Beatty went through quite a good emergency kit there, in having flashlights and different things like that. Is there anything else that anybody else up here would suggest or that you might have in your own? Go ahead, John.
Household generator. Permanent, non-permanent, something they put gasoline in. They have propane, natural gas. If you put a permanent in place generator off the ground, 3 to 6 feet in the air, you could research online several different companies. Your average 1,500 to 2,000 square foot house, 10,000 watt would be fine. You get into larger homes, 15, 20, very, you can do whatever you want with a generator. It'll save your food, you'll have heat during the winter. We're talking about flood mitigation, but Sandy was not. It was all wind, all trees, no power for a very long time. And people lost refrigerators, freezers, freezing cold. They had to get out of town. They had to go stay with people, hotels. And I have a generator, it works great.
Yeah, and just to add to that is obviously I have to plug that you need a permit for a generator. And you also need a permit for any electrical that you're putting in for a generator, because most generators are 220, right? I think that John brings up a great point. A lot of people after Sandy did get generators. They got gas, natural gas generators directly connected to the house, but there are other options. But again, don't wait. If you don't have a generator and you just want a gas powered generator, don't wait until the storm hits because you're not going to get one. You're not going to find it on the shelves. Do it now. This is kind of an embarrassing story, but I remember during Sandy that my father drove all the way from Pennsylvania to give me a generator because you couldn't find one, right? And it was cold during Sandy, and I think I had a 6-month-old at that point. So it's very much one of those things that, one, I will never be unprepared like that again, but two, you don't think of until you're in that moment. So think of it now, right?
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
Hello, this is April from Ridgewood. This time during Hurricane Ada, our house has suffered serious damage also. So when I was saying Diane actually just has brought up to move the cars, we were quite ignorant, like we didn't move our cars and we lost both cars. And now it's very hard to get a car, not only expensive and it's short of inventory. So does the town has a special location? Like you can let us know if there's signs of flood, where we should move our cars to.
So I think to answer that question most succinctly, I would just say the parking deck. Okay. But certainly anything that you know in your neighborhood that is above the flood area. If I'm thinking about South Mountain, anything on, north, above Mountain View Road, right? You could be on Trader Joe's too, and I'm trying to avoid telling people to park on private property, but certainly, I think during a storm, most people are not worried about whether there's a stray car there. I don't think the police department's responding to calls for tows and in parking lots. So that would be my most succinct answer on that. And certainly I think that we can make sure that is part of our forward communication so that people understand that, and that they understand that our concern during a weather event like that. Now, during a snowstorm, totally different story. Don't park on the street, right? We don't want you parking on the street. But during a storm like that, our concern is not whether people are parked on the street or not, or on higher ground, or in lot 3 or lot 7 for those in the Glenwood area, or the parking deck or Trader Joe's or anything like that. So certainly, do what you can to keep your property safe there.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure we're not parking a place that get cars towed. The second thing is is there generally shelter location like people can go to during a storm when it happens? Like this time we were looking for a hotel, and before that, if there's a shelter in town that's regularly maintained, or at least we know a location, like before any emergency like this, people has some information, like if you are in risk at your home, where you should go.
So in our emergency operations plan, we have 4 shelters in town. One is the Milburn High School. The next one is the Milburn Middle School. We have the Bauer Community Center and the Milburn Public Library. In addition to that, we have 2 cooling centers, which is the Bauer Community Center and the mall at Short Hills. But it takes a little bit, there's a lot to getting a shelter going. We need
yes, I understand that would be need preparation, right? Once things like this time, the flood, Hurricane Ada happens, there's no communication like telling people where you can go if you have nowhere to go.
Yeah, so the first place where we go is to our county partners. They open up a shelter usually as well, and we refer our residents in the community to go to the Essex County shelter, which is usually at the Cody Arena. We also look for Livingston also sometimes open their shelter. So we look at our who's surrounding us, what community surrounds us, and see if they have a shelter open. Because sometimes we may only have 20 people, 30 people. And in this case, in this storm, we opened the library and we housed, I think it was approximately 40 to 50 people that were stranded either in businesses or in cars. So we try to network at first. But if it's a bigger event, then yes, we have the capability to open those shelters, but we also require assistance from the Red Cross and some other volunteer organizations that aid at disasters to assist us with staffing and police with security and a whole bunch of other resources that come together.
And I think it's just important to note that anything that we're offering would be extremely temporary. These are,
Yes.
these are not long-term shelters, but I think the chief gave a pretty good list of what, and we have to decide what is open, what we're going to provide based on our staffing levels, as well as what's safe. Like Bauer Community Center during flood, not a good place to be, right? So we have to decide what is going to be safe. School, that's a difficult one because, that's not going to last very long because certainly most people are going to be getting back to normal. They're trying to get back to school. Kids who have to go to school. I think school is closed for a day post Ida. So it's certainly a decision process, and certainly we do lean on the county to provide those sheltering facilities, and anything we provide will be temporary. But I think the chief gave a good list there.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely not looking for long-term shelter. I'm looking for like a emergency shelter.
Yep.
Like information. I mean, I hope this information will be shared next time if anything happens. So if there's like communication going out, so everyone who is in the emergency would have a place to go. It's definitely just for short term, like overnight or a day or two before we can figure out what we do.
Yep, understood. And I think we can commit to communicating a little bit better on that.
Another question. So if people see the signs like this time, some people see the signs of flood like on the street pretty early, but there's like people don't know where to report it. So is there a phone number we should call if we notice something unusual?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I think some of the communication we did have out prior to some storms. I think it was actually the one that occurred. It wasn't too long ago. I remember having you check on things quite a bit, but we had asked people to call the non-emergency number at the police department, so 7001, because then that gives us the ability to investigate, look at it, make sure it's not just poor drainage in a roadway, that it is actual flooding. And so, but of course, always the caveat is if there's something that's threatening life or limb or your property, then you should call 911. But if you're just reporting, hey, it looks like the Taylor Park's high and it's, flooding on the main street, that's something that you can call the non-emergency number, and then, a unit or the fire department will go out and investigate. I think a couple of people had brought up, on Saturday we saw some fire department activity in the park. Was that as a result of the rain and stuff like that? That actually was not related to the rain, correct, Rob? Yeah. So, but that's not to say the fire department is one of those that is constantly monitoring the streams, constantly monitoring those problem areas that we know of, so that early detection is a possibility. And so just want to make that clear. But yeah, the non-emergency number. Wow, that was a very long answer to a very short question.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm just looking for that number because it's not for like an emergency like 911, but we can report signs of risk and can get quick reaction on, not just have to wait 3 days before someone can do something.
Yeah, so
I'm not sure what.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. One of the issues is what I said earlier on, I was talking about, is that when you call 7001 or 7035 or any of the numbers, because even at my desk they're calling too, just trying to get a hold of everybody. You go in the queue, and it may take like an Ida event 2 days, or like an Irene event or a Floyd event. It may take 2 or 3 days for us to get to you But once you call once, you go into our database and we will be out there. So you only really have to call once, and any of those numbers, give them the information. If no one answers, call back, but we'll get to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I just want to make a quick note too with the moving of the cars. Electric vehicles have to be moved. If you live in any of the flood areas, electric vehicles become almost a little hazardous material incident on themselves with the batteries, with the leaking of all that stuff. If you do have an EV, definitely move those higher ground, because they just, not only are they going to get flooded, they'll be destroyed, they're going to contaminate the area all around it.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for all of this. It's Rachel Lerner and Jesse Schachter. So a couple of things, just a couple of questions was, one, we do get the weather alerts or like the gauge alerts. But I set them obviously too low. Like I set them at 5 feet from the National Weather Service or the hydraulics. So what is the gauge in which then you should become concerned? Because I think like me setting it at 5 feet is still too low. And I think someone was already talking about like that, you know, like what the gauges are.
Yeah, I think again, part of the reason that the gauge that I watch in Springfield is because it actually indicates on that gauge. I think it's an NOAA gauge. It actually indicates minor flood stage, medium flood stage, major flood stage, and that gives me at least a clearer idea of what is occurring. Yes, that is downstream in Springfield, but certainly if it's happening downstream in Springfield, it's at that level in Milburn as well. So, but I'll let Chief Edgevere speak a little bit more to how he sets his gauge.
So again, I'm not an engineer, but the way I set my gauge is that if you go on that website, there's a tab that you can open up and it'll tell you what is the flood stage, and then you can really look at the history of that gauge from Ida, Irene, Floyd, and those storms, and say, okay, where is the water at? Or even compare it to Saturday's rain event. You can be like, okay, it was only 3 inches high, and it was only not even at flood. I always tend to err on the side of safety, set them lower so I could get that early notice. So that way we could communicate that with our partners. Hey, the streams are going up, to make sure that there's no obstruction. It could be anything like stuff like that. But again, I can't tell you exactly how to set it, but the way I set mine is based on the history of the gauge and the flood, the normal flood stage and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I set them, but I just wanted to kind of see how you guys are using it.
Just going to jump in one more time here. Sorry, Rachel. Is that, certainly we can have a conversation with our engineers and with those that have been working with us on some of these issues. I'm not going to commit to anything or promise that we'll be able to come up with a proper height. But maybe there's something that can be identified or established in that. But again, not necessarily promising anything on that, but to your point, so that you have a better idea.
Yeah, just because we are new residents, and most of our neighbors are new residents, and a lot of us just, we get these alerts all the time, and we personally were not set up with the SWIFT or knew anything about it. So, just again, I think knowledge is power, and having, direct sources, because there are at least 8 homes within 2 blocks of our house right now that are for sale or under contract. And so I just, bringing to my next point is just how do we also communicate all these things to new residents? I do think it's important. I know that, it's a delicate subject because people move here, but I do think it's important to kind of have a plan as far as preparing new residents also for it. And then my last point was just, where is the water actually coming from? So, because we had 2 cars that filled up with water right in front of our house. We're on Locust between Ridgewood and Mountain View. And I'm not sure if the 2 cars were coming directly from Milburn Ave or if they were coming down Mountain View and then made a right on Locust. But their cars filled up with water, above their window within a very, very short amount of time. And then it wound up being my husband and 4 other neighbors that wound up having to go out in the water and save them. so obviously we don't want that to ever happen again. And now we know like the dangers to what happened because of, several people dying in the area. And so I'm just curious, like where did the water exactly come from? Like, and if possible, are there like police, barriers or things that either come off of Milburn that are going down towards Ridgewood, or is it coming on Mountain View? What was done? And then what can be done?
There's a lot of questions.
I know. So my main question is first, where did where is water coming from that reaches like the Locust, Ridgewood, Mountain View area? Because I'm just thinking like, how did these people turn off to our area? And then the second question would be, were there any barricades or like, were there any things that were put up? And if not, can we put them up? Because again, like no one wants to hear like, like people screaming in their cars, that they're going to die. And then, having like a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old hear that through their windows, so, just trying to like convey, like, I really appreciate this forum and I appreciate all the knowledge, but I do want you also to hear like the personal experiences that we all had and our children had.
Of course. No, I was just trying to make sure that I, understood each of the questions that you were asking. Sure, Sarah, if you would like to address that. I mean, I want to.
To the last part, which is the question of where is the water coming from? I'm on the subcommittee for South Mountain on the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee, and that's exactly what we're trying to determine. So we're with the assistance of the 2D modeling, which everybody's heard about now. We are looking at specific locations with the engineer John Rushke, and we hope to have an answer to that. To the first question, which I think was about
how to let new residents know.
No, before that,
No.
Oh gosh.
The police barricades.
I'm sorry, Rachel, what?
Police barricades and where roads going to be
No.
shut.
Yeah, the gauge.
No, it had. What was done? Yes, okay, sorry. This is, I think in the first presentation John Rushke did, which is on our page for Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee, he ran through what the chief was talking about, which was all the gauges historically for our major storms. And that's on the website. So if she wants to go there, John has done it before, it's available.
Yeah, and I think I think we've sufficiently sort of gone through what the township has done in the past, when it comes to flood mitigation, whether that's the installation of Gilbert Pump, whether it's the wall at Ridgewood Avenue, the Haran Circle Earthen Dam, the emergency generator on that dam. There's been quite a few efforts throughout the years. I mean, and if you go back to, years before any of us were around, there was flood mitigation going on in this municipality, whether it was the channelization of the Rahway River through the downtown, different things like that. The reconstruction of the dam at Taylor Park, the bypass that was put there. There's definitely been a bunch of efforts throughout the years. And right now, the efforts that are taking place are the wonderful Flood Mitigation Advisory Group that's been working hard to figure out, where the water is coming from, what the modeling is saying, so that we can better sort of pinpoint where our efforts need to be, rather than sort of, wasting time or energy in a place where we're not going to have the most impact or effectuate the most change. So that is precisely what that group is going through. And then I just want to address the last question I don't think we've addressed, which is, how do we let new residents know? Well, first and foremost, sessions like this. This will be posted on the township's website. Also, there's a newcomers club in town. They can provide information like this. South Mountain Civic Association, other civic associations that exist in the municipality can let residents know. They can help educate residents. So I think that's really the crux of it is as much communication as we can amongst our community, amongst our neighbors, because the more people know, the more, like you said, knowledge is power. Without that, people sort of tend to be in the dark, and they find out, at the wrong time. what's capable, what is, capable in this community. So, and then as far as police barricades, I think that, during Ida and during the storm, there were an immense amount of emergency operations going on, in terms of rescues from vehicles, rescues from buildings, that barricades were not probably deployed in the area at that point in time when a vehicle was able to traverse into the neighborhood and get flooded out. But I can't speak directly to it, but I can just imagine that it was as a result of the operation that was taking place at that time.
So as far as, to be specific, so as far as roads go in South Mountain, because again, in Hoboken and Jersey City, I know that they preemptively, shut down roads and, block where they know that flooding occurs. So in the South Mountain area specifically, are there traditionally roads that, have cones up that say do not come, like low-lying area? That's specifically what I was asking.
Okay, I'll let Ed answer that.
I think part of the problem there is that you're in a closed loop where there's really no way out besides heading out either to Main Street behind Taylor Park, which was obviously flooded, trying to head out to Vauxhall Road, which is where most likely the barricades were, preventing people from trying to go through the floodwaters from Vauxhall towards Cypress, where it hits Milburn Avenue. So when you get somebody who was stuck, like Alex saw earlier in the night, making the loop around Wells Fargo consistently, you had cars in your area that were trying to get home who were basically stuck in a loop. So it becomes incumbent upon that particular driver not to drive into the floodwater. It's plain and simple. What that person should have done, again, like Alex suggested, should have pulled over on Milburn Avenue and just stopped and waited it out. Unfortunately, they chose to try to sneak their way through, for less of a better term, and they got flooded.
Yeah, because there were two cars that came one after the other within, I would say, like an hour and a half or so, that came from the same direction. They came from Milburn Ave down towards Ridgewood on Locust. So again, it's just like identifying a pattern and just, again, like preemptively preventing things like that happening. And I know that you all are, trying to get the data that, that Sarah had just mentioned about where the water came from. And that was kind of my question about police barricades and shutting down roads, or at least, giving signs like it's a low-lying area, don't come down this way. But yes, South Mountain is tricky because it is, there's a lot of curvy turns, and yet it's easy to get lost in it if you're not familiar. But it was two cars within an hour of each other that came down. So again, just worth looking into and investigating, for future, about that.
No, appreciate that, Rachel. I think, and understanding your question more, I think that is something that we should discuss and understand a little bit better. And appreciate that input.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for all of you. I know that, it's tough being short-staffed and all you did. So we really appreciate, everything that you do. And, of course, feel free to, reach out if we need anything. But just so you know, I am asking like South Mountain School people, like where they saw water and, around the area, because a lot of people are not on the flood chat. And so far, I have not received any responses as far as what they've identified, other than what, the flood committee already knows. But I'll keep you posted if I do hear anything.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, take care. Thanks.
Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Esposito. I'm down on Meadowbrook Road. I just want to say thank you to everyone here for all your efforts and your time spent. I know that the fire chief looks at the gauges. I ran into him on Broadway Road one night a couple weeks ago. There was a rain event and he was there and he was checking up on the status. I also help out with the flood committee with Miriam and Sarah, and Miriam and I represent the Glenwood area. And for anyone that's online, just, if you have concerns, please attend those meetings that we have once a month. That's for the public to attend. In the room, I'm looking at a pump and my basement flooded. One thing that I kind of want to bring awareness to is now is the time. It's not when, if it's gonna happen, it's when. And so now, this is all about preparedness. So if you have French drains, if you have a sump pump, go check your float now. I was going away on vacation and my luggage was stored right next to the pump, and I was like, something told me to like lift it up and check. The water was at the very top. The pump was burnt out. I would have gone away. My basement would have flooded again. So check your pumps now. We talked about check valves. There's also, if you lose power, your pump's not going to be working. You can get, I'm going to butcher the name of it, but I think it's called the Venturi System, where your pump can be then force fed by your cold water to get the pump moving. You could have a battery backup, but just because you have a battery backup doesn't mean the battery is charged. You might have bought it 5 years ago and the battery's dead. So that's a very important thing is check your pumps. Another thing is, I think we just all need to look out for each other. And, commuting into the city, you would see the billboards. If you see something, say something. So I think now it's like, behind my house is the little creek around Meadowbrook. And I know that there's a storm grate on Glenwood that the person that's living there, they're renting, they don't really know that to check that storm grate, if it's going to rain, to like the rake the leaves. So I think it's that sharing awareness, and in the see something, say something. We don't want to overload any of the emergency lines or the 911 or even that, but there is the SDL portal. And maybe, I don't know if people are aware of that. They go on the website. If there is a tree limb that's resting on some wires, preemptively now go on the portal. If you see, debris, those tree limbs that were down up the street that no one knew about, that kind of got washed and blocked, that if we see those things now, we can preemptively, let people know before it becomes an emergency. So again, thank you for all your time and everything that you do. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Great points, Joe. Absolutely. Now is the time for all of that. And that's sort of why we're doing it now. And we want to make sure that everybody starts to think about it. And, I think it's just important to involve your whole family. I think it's important to make sure that you're exploring all the information that's available out there. Again, tons of resources. Everything is on our website, whether you look under the flooding page under our community, or you look at the Office of Emergency Management page, or you look at the Flood Mitigation Advisory page. I mean, there are quite a few things out there, and we've actually had a little bit of a social media campaign going on in which we've been putting out messages on Facebook and continue to sort of prep people as well. And so we will be continuing that as well, making sure that this information is getting out on multiple channels. And so is there anybody else online? Okay. Is there anything else from the panel that you guys would like to state or close with?
Okay. So over the years, I've been in so many backyards, assisting residents with pumping, with why the drain's not working. Everything most of the time, it's the simplest things as the baby pool has floated over and got on top of the drain. The drain was working and it just instantly stopped. It's kids' toys. It's the brush that should have been moved to higher ground, the cut grass that somebody is storing off to the side. It's the loose things in the backyards that could cause havoc. The decorative, everybody wants that red or black mulch, floats in an instant, right to the grate, clogs it. Worst enemy. It's nice to have good looking things, but when it's going to rain, preparing, maybe raking that mulch back out of the low spot and preparing for the water to move down the channel and get to the drain is key. But floatables is a key factor to keeping the drains working 100%.
John, that's a good point. Also, just want to add to that during a storm is no longer the time to worry about those drains, right? It's too late. Don't go out trying to clear drains, trying to clear catch basins, trying to unclog something. It just adds danger And I think that, I think it just, just prepare for it, clean up the yard, and make sure the kids clean up the yard. But anyway, Chris, you want to say something?
Just to touch on the pumps real quick and how to call in water in the basement and what the priority is. It's not necessarily the amount of water in the basement that's the priority. It's what the water is impacting. Is it, going over your electrical panel? Is it, up to your outlets? Is it affecting your hot water heater or your furnace? Those are the important ones that we want to know about, because water in the basement is terrible. We all get that. It's what the water is doing in the basement that is our priority. Because if you do have a pilot light and the water floods over it, now you're gonna have gas in the house. So these are some things that you have to do a little, investigation with. Don't say, "Oh, I just have water in the basement." What is the water impacting in the basement? And then when we're pumping, right? We touched on it before. The outside water has to get pumped out before the inside water. This is a 2-inch electric pump. We have, in the fire department, we have about 24 electric ones between 2-inch and 3-inch. They're for basic interior water. They're not designed to suck up solids more than that can fit through the grate. So that's why there's different size pumps and different style pumps. Right, when you do outside, you have to have the bigger pump that can flow the solids through it without clogging it. And on the inside, store water, or sewage that backs up, not to throw it on the DPW, but they have the pumps that handle the solids for sewage. The fire department does not. We can try to help and assist, but that's another thing that you can give the information on. Is it, some pump backing up, a broken pipe that's flooding the basement, or is it, sewage coming up? Because we have different pumps that do different things. So knowing as much information we can over the phone, we can redirect the priority and the resources in the right way. Then with the outside water, right, you might only have a little bit, but if you have a sump pump failure and you're going to pump the water outside and there's only a little bit, it's just going to recirculate through the opening in your sump pump, right? So the water has to be able to go somewhere. So until that recedes a little bit, or in the storm drains receding can accept it, because we try to put enough hose out to the street level to get it off the property, the water has to be able to go somewhere. So some people are like, "Oh, you're not pumping," but the water outside that necessarily won't be impacting the foundation, but it's going to impact the flow of where the water is going to go to. So again, sometimes we try not to say that we can't help you right now, but sometimes that's what you might have to hear. And then you're still going to be in the queue, and there's going to be a list, and then we're going to prioritize and go down the street one after the other, because it's usually, a multiple, house area that's affected. Instead of leapfrogging because you called 5 minutes before the next person, we usually start at one end of the street and go all the way down, as long as the water has somewhere to go once it's outside the house.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Anything else from anybody? All right. Well, again, truly appreciate everybody spending the last 2 hours with us, and listening, and hopefully thinking about, how you all can be prepared as we enter into, hurricane season and storm season. And, just want to express, obviously what it's up here, and the people that work for the township and the way that they respond in these types of events. It's a pleasure to serve this community, and I think that everybody shares that sentiment here. Certainly, especially those that have grown up here, and there's a lot of history here and institutional knowledge, and we truly appreciate serving the community and look forward to doing it, and just hope that we all have a safe summer and storm season, and that everybody's out there sort of thinking about ways they can prepare their family and their property as we continue to think about ways that we can prepare and respond to the community.